Yes, thanks for having me. Um, what I saw in my book when I began the research, I was looking to celebrate the way that we had begun to politicize our sexual bodies, right, and free them from the repression of the enforced separation of body and mind, uh, during which the mind was in charge of the body, or body and soul, during the years of religion and the years of like strict patriarchy. So we had finally separated sex from procreation, between the 1970s and the 1990s with like birth control, IVF, cheap paternity tests. And I felt this was the first time in human history that our sexual relations, our mating, was undergoing such a fundamental change that, like, in the future, it would we could see how it had affected our evolution. So from an evolutionary point of view and a socio-political and anthropological point of view, I was very interested in the way that our sexuality had just kind of exploded on the public sphere. The personal is political, and also I was entering it as an ardent feminist. So I felt that it was overall a positive thing when I went out to speak to people, and I spent about 4 years continuously traveling, embedding myself in different communities, and I found only contradictions. I found I was wrong in my assumptions. I found that there was a lot of repression still going on. I found that there was an extreme kind of decline in ethics, which was the result of this separation from our bodies. So the scientific revolution had further like distanced us from our nature and made us beholden completely to our culture and the laws and the words, new laws that constantly changed in reproductive matters. Um, so what you're describing as the norm now, which is an overall loneliness and sense of despair and kind of like understanding love, uh, becoming one with each other, trusting each other, um, is a result of that fragmentation, which I think created a new stage in our society, which is like a post patriarchy, like a meta culture, right? And what you named, with Jeffrey Epstein, is again, very much a result of that sense of women are empowered by objectifying their own body, right? So that creates such a vast distance from oneself. There is no way to reunite with ourselves and find our own truth. So we're always looking for that truth outside. Um, and we are not listening to our body, which is what we are, you know. Yeah, I felt that the repression was exacerbated in all of these like newly freed sexual expressions. So the cross-dressers, for example, um, who had already begun hormonal changes. So most of them were already on hormones and they had these like gorgeous brand new breasts, but they were like, middle-aged judges. So it was very incongruous to look at. And it was a kind of embodied example of how strange our medical interventions, cosmetic interventions actually are. Um, uh, anyway, that's a side note. They took on personas that were very conservative. The way that Jenner, I guess, is very conservative. She just spoke against the trans athlete, swimmer who won all these swims. So that's what I mean. They had most of them stayed with their wives and just wanted to feel for themselves in a kind of narcissistic, hunger, that adoration. that we give to the female. Now, you know, the desire for the female and the adoration for the female is very natural. You know, nature makes, you know, the female like attractive and irresistible for reasons of procreation, right? But we have completely like pushed nature out of the way. So we live in overculture. It's like only culture. And so our understanding of like feminine beauty or feminine attraction uh, is something that we think we can replicate with medicine and chemistry and our fancy scientific tricks. Yeah, and we, you know, we want to experience everything. To me, that's hubris. Um, and yes, it doesn't change the conditions of oppression, whether it's economical, you know, oppression, because these these perks are mostly the privilege of the rich. You know, it costs money to do all these cosmetic changes, um, and stay artificially, you know, permanently, let's say, youthful. um, but also in terms of like the oppression of the people giving birth by the people who don't give birth, let's call it, because we're post gender now. But that hasn't changed the basic terms of patriarchy, right? So, yeah, their wives were obedient and followed them around